Why am I wearing a mask?
Yeah.
Because these people like to do crazy things, you know? They like to put your face everywhere, flip the news on you. Come on, you already know what this is.
You're a counter-protester. That gentleman's a counter-protester. Come down here, he says, to make a point against the pro-Palestinian protests that are taking place here. This encampment has been here since Thursday last week. It was erected in the early hours of Thursday morning last week. We're now Wednesday, 6 days later, 3 a.m. local time, 10 past 3 local time. And the situation here, incredibly tense, as the California State Police are now moving, potentially preparing to go into that encampment and make arrests.
It's 3:13 in Los Angeles. We will take a pause from our coverage of that breaking situation and developing situation at UCLA. We bring you some breaking news now here from the UK. Sky News understands that the 14-year-old victim of the sword attack in Hainault yesterday was a student at Bancroft School in Woodford Green. One of the victims of the Nottingham attacks last year, Grace Amali Kumar, was also a former student of that school. The school's flag is currently flying at half-mast, showing you some of the images of that situation yesterday, the attack in Hainault, that van inside that police cordon, a key part of the inquiry that is ongoing, and we will bring you the latest developments with regards to the situation in Hainault yesterday. 5 people attacked, 1 person, a 14-year-old boy, killed. Inquiries ongoing. We'll bring you more on that breaking story. Let's return, though, to the situation in Los Angeles, shall we? Let's speak to Sean Beckner-Carmichael, who spoke to us earlier in the programme, videographer on the ground in LA. Sean, how has the situation developed around you in the last hour or so?
In the last hour, law enforcement has seemed to put a little bit more of a priority on making their presence known. Many of the pro-Israel counter-protesters have left. However, I am still seeing the occasional moment of tension. I'm seeing right now, as we speak, a few counter-protesters screaming at the encampment. The counter-demonstrators were earlier chanting peaceful protest. Now they are chanting from the river to the sea style chants. In addition to that, there is a woman who appears to be locked in prayer. California Highway Patrol appears to be moving to clear the area in front of the encampment, and she was refusing to move. She currently is not in the area, so she just the situation just sort of finished over there. I'm still seeing counter-protesters walk around the area of Dixon Court, which is right in front of the encampment. And I am seeing quite a bit of flashing lights, quite a bit of threats in one area, but overall things do seem to be de-escalating.
Sean Beckner-Carmichael, who is on the scene for us, a videographer at UCLA. Also there for us is Sky News' Martha Kellner. Martha, we've seen this moving police line moving along the front of the encampment. We saw those gazebos, pieces of wood. You can see the tents, the umbrellas, these earlier scuffles. And now we come back to you live, this breaking, developing situation. What is happening now, Martha?
Yeah, I mean, just look at this scene on a US university campus. California Highway Patrol wearing riot shields, riot masks, gas masks underneath their helmets and visors. Just edging back the perimeter around this tent encampment. Just a word on why they're wearing gas masks and why I'm wearing a gas mask, and that's because throughout the course of the evening, from inside this encampment, you can just see the top of that encampment with the white tents there. From inside that encampment, or at least the vicinity of that encampment, a substance was released. I think probably pepper spray, but the police here not taking any chances, wearing gas masks, preparing, I guess, potentially to access this encampment, which is protected by a layer of metal fences, by wooden plaques and sheets. And this tent encampment has been in position since Thursday last week. It was erected in the early hours of Thursday morning. And for the past several days now, 6 days, UCLA administrators have taken a fairly relaxed stance towards the encampment, out of step actually with what other universities have been doing in their approach to these encampments. But something today seems to have shifted. The UCLA administrators seem to have run out of patience with this encampment, and they issued a statement this evening designating the encampment illegal, and that seems to have sparked what we've seen happening here today. It began around 11 p.m. yesterday evening with violent skirmishes. You can just see here, as we've seen throughout the past couple of hours since the police arrived on the scene, they're altering their positions, they're changing their lines, they're adjusting in preparation for potential operations. You can see their grip on the batons here has slightly changed as well. This line of California Highway Police, their equivalent of state troopers, potentially looking to access this encampment. You can just see in the background there a female police officer, I believe, and she's gripping what is a tear gas gun, I think, with pellets of tear gas potentially. I can't quite make that out, but police certainly edging back this perimeter. And just beyond the perimeter, just behind where my cameraman is, you can see students and other people from the community have come to have a look at what is going on. Some of these people, definitely students, wondering, you imagine, what on earth has happened to their university over the past week, and to universities across America over the past couple of weeks. I can't quite believe what I'm seeing here. The early hours of the morning, midweek, on a US university campus, and you have a line of California state troopers supported by scores of LA Police Department officers preparing to go in and break up an encampment. And I think it's worth sort of reflecting on the fact that US universities haven't seen student protests like this since 1968 and the protests against the Vietnam War. Just having a look at what's going on inside this scrum here. Can't quite make out what's going on. Oh, this is a group of students who have formed a line in front of the California State Police, refusing to move, but they're being gently jostled forward by the highway patrol. Some of them you can see wearing rather flimsy masks, swimming goggles as well. They're clearly making a stand. These are the pro-Palestinian protesters who have been here, some of them for the past several days. But you imagine this is something of a last stand. They know that the police are going to move in tonight after these violent skirmishes. You sense that they know that this potentially, or this iteration of this protest is coming to an end. I'm just trying to make out exactly what's going on here.
Whilst you take a look at that scene around you, let's just bring you this live shot that's on the left-hand side of the screen for our viewers. This will give you a bit of context as to what is happening on the ground. This is an aerial shot that is showing that progressing line of Californian police officers who have been inching their way alongside that encampment. In the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can see into the encampment itself. Across the middle, on a diagonal up to the right-hand side, you can see those tents that form the edge of this encampment that is on the premises. And these officers from various law enforcement agencies brought in at the request of the university authorities. That happened about 3 hours ago or so. We've been following the situation for the past hour on the ground. Our correspondent Martha Kellner there, alongside law enforcement officers wearing that gas mask. That's because Martha and her crew, as they approached those line of tents about half an hour or so ago now, were recipients, I think is the only way to say it, of some gas. We don't know whether that was tear gas or pepper spray, but it was fired in their direction and affected the crew. A short while ago, we saw another cameraman having water applied to his face, seemingly to wash off the effects of that spray. And as Martha was saying there, as these officers inched their way along the front of that encampment, we saw some of the protesters, counter-protesters, wearing masks. They had swimming goggles that were up on their foreheads. They'd got water bottles in hand, potentially again to deal with the effects of that gas if it's used, people with gloves. So that's the aerial scene above the ground. Let's take you back onto the ground. Martha Kellner there, our US correspondent. And Martha, these are remarkable developing breaking images.
Yeah, they really are scarcely fathomable scenes on a US university campus. As you say, I'm wearing a gas mask similarly to the California State Police because around an hour ago some sort of substance came from within that pro-Palestinian encampment. I don't know whether it was pepper spray or tear gas. I think probably pepper spray. But people taking precautions. I've seen people with milk, which they're using to wash their eyes out. And certainly it is possible that the police may decide also to use tear gas to break up these pro-Palestinian protests which have been happening for almost 6 days now. They have been protested against as well. There has been a significant presence of counter-protesters throughout the week, but just over the course of this evening, those protests and counter-protests have turned violent. We've seen rocks and fireworks being thrown into that encampment. And the UCLA Chancellor, so the president of this university, around 2 hours ago now, requested the support of Los Angeles Police Department officers here on this campus as they struggled, the UCLA Police Department struggled to bring this situation under control.
Martha Kellner live at UCLA in Los Angeles for us, 3:24 in the morning there. And we've seen these officers moving across the front of the encampment there. This, of course, follows the scenes that we saw at Columbia University over on the east coast of the United States. And that dramatic picture of that police vehicle moving up to the side of the building. Riot police officers making their way up the ladders at Columbia University on the East Coast, entering that university building and clearing demonstrators who had taken over that building, and they were taken away in buses. That was in the previous hours over the course of the last day. That was on the East Coast. We're focusing now on the West Coast over at UCLA. So you can see the situation here developing now. Martha Kellner and our crew will be following that over the course of the coming hours, I'm sure. You can also follow the developments for yourself. Scan that QR code for the breaking news. It will take you to the Sky News website and to the Sky News app. That's all from me, Gareth Barlow. Business Live with Ian King is coming up in a few moments' time, looking at that surprise fall in UK house prices.
Got it. Well, here comes another group of CHP officers to reinforce that first group. They're moving around a little bit, and they're going to come and actually push the rest of this group is their plan. They're trying to push this group out peacefully to separate the two groups. And just a quick look, we still see a number of law enforcement officers continuing to pour in. As I mentioned before, LAPD, CHP, and also LA County Sheriffs. And the LA County Sheriffs have a contingency, but it seems like they are just waiting to make sure and see what is going to happen with the current situation. We see a big force of LAPD officers more or less just supporting the CHP effort at this point. And there's also a mix of UCLA's public safety department in there as well. So large law enforcement presence. You see them now. There's a number of strategy missions going on and talking, and they are just trying to resolve this as peacefully as possible. Here again, another group of CHP officers being deployed near the front of the line here. Okay, here's CHP's pushing through and now moving people throughout to try to push them out of this area. You can see a large group that was standing there kind of just waiting, now exiting the quad area. CHP just strengthening their lines here. Still no arrest scene. You still see a number of supporters or number of this group still on this side of the tents. And remember, they've created a makeshift barrier in between here with plywood and barriers and pallets. So the barrier still stands. It was about an hour ago or so, there was a number of pieces of that barrier that were being torn away or torn down. And there was a number of counter protesters or protesters taking them over here and dumping it and just trying to break down the barrier as much as they could. However, that has now stopped since the presence of law enforcement has arrived on scene and the clashes between the two groups have stopped. So the entrenched encampment, the pro-Palestinian side of this event, is still here. They're still on this side with a number of tents and a number of, basically fortified their area, you could see, with pallets and just anything that could be found. And here we have CHP closing out the gap. Like mentioned before, they're letting people disperse on their own through this corridor, and now they've circled the gap. They've come all the way down, they've cleared the quad, and now they're pushing people back to the south to just clear the quad altogether. They've also have a line or a skirmish line, a contingency, blocking off the entrances back into the quad. So we've seen CHP methodically come through this quad and hold their line. Very peaceful, no arrests being made, no clashes between the law enforcement officers and protesters. They're just very slowly pushing people out of the quad and separating the two groups. Yeah, perfect. See a number of CHP and LAPD officers still continuing to move in groups. You can see they were prepared to make arrests. Those big white bundles you see at their waist are plastic handcuffs, used often in these situations. And here they are just pushing that group through the quad and backfilling and supporting, just keeping it closed down. Copy that, and just been told by the booth that if you're joining us here live on ABC 7 and ABC streaming channels, on the right side of your screen you see a live ground shot courtesy of Reuters, and on the left side of the screen you see us up here in Air 7 with continuous coverage over the situation unfolding at UCLA. LAPD and CHP officers doing the best they can to disperse the two entities or separate the two crowds of protesters from each other as peacefully as they can. And just as they come around, we'll give them a couple minutes. They're being blocked on my shot by a tree, but we will shortly come in and see where CHP's goal was to enter the quad and peacefully use the skirmish line just to push the protesters out of the quad. As I said earlier, you see a line of officers lining this walkway here. They're using this walkway as an exit to the quad, and they're slowly but surely just pushing the protesters out of the quad along that way so they could set a space or area between the two protesters. Yeah, perfect. Yep. And we're going to move around. A little weather coming in here. Big thanks to my pilot, Tyler, doing a great job early here. Thanks for joining us. And as before mentioned, here's the CHP skirmish line, and this is the last group of pro-Israeli protesters that were on this side, that they're just making space between the two groups. And you can see very slowly but methodically, CHP has done an excellent job of just maintaining the peace and just moving people out of the way rather than any signs of force or any signs of people getting arrested. It's more just create space between the two groups to stop any of the conflict that was happening between the two groups. And here's a good shot of what I was talking about earlier. Here's the makeshift barrier that was created with all types of different construction materials. Pallets, there's a number of just stanchions there, plywood material, whatever can be found that was utilized to create a barrier between the two groups that was just being picked up and thrown earlier, well, just a couple hours ago when we were seeing this live on ABC, and we had coverage of the two groups that actually erupted in a bit of conflict and violence between the two. And you see a mix of CHP and UCLA PD or UCLA public safety members down there. There was a question that came about earlier, why the CHP? UCLA is a state school, so ultimate law enforcement or authority will fall in lines for the CHP. And so that's why you see CHP active on the campus. But they are being supported by LAPD. You'll see LAPDs down here in the black uniforms, CHP wearing the tan uniforms. And the LAPD has a big force of uniformed personnel here supporting the CHP efforts as the CHP continues to clear this area. Once again, this is the last piece of the contingency that was left on the quad, and CHP has met their goal. Initially, when we first got on scene, we came on a few hours ago just to try to keep with this continuous coverage. There was a clash here where the two groups met, and since then, CHP has come in and created the space on the quad in between the two groups, and essentially just escorted the group out and created a barrier between the two to stop any forms of violence. And now you can see LAPD contingency right behind them and just reinforcing those skirmish lines to make sure that everybody is just moving out here. Again, let me show you the number of law enforcement officers that are here at UCLA is quite impressive. And just as I said that, you could see in our ground shot just there was some shots of those actual ground units that were lined up along the outskirts here. And you see a big contingency of officers. The officer you just saw on your right-hand screen with less lethal force, none of that has been used here. Yet to see any tear gas or any forms of crowd control measures, anything like that. It's just been a series of movement of people through a show of force. And as you can see, LAPD has now reinforced that skirmish line, and they have kept the people out of the quad. And CHP is now falling back and reconciling their units to see where they could be to push the people out of the quad area. And now LAPD has reinforced that line, and now everybody has exited the quad, as that was their plan from the start tonight, to just try to create some space and create some peace in between the two groups. I got it. It'll probably be a clean handoff. You know, they'll get up at 4, and then right when they come, so we should be able to. We'll try to hold out until we just flip flop. Yeah, it's right over Hollywood. So kind of like K-Joy. Yeah. And back with us out here live at UCLA, you could see still what CHP has done is cleared the quad of all protesters on this side. This was the pro-Israeli side. The pro-Palestinian side of this conflict or this protest are encamped in these tents here. And you see a contingency of LAPD holding down one side of the quad. You see LAPD and CHP holding down the other side of the quad. The goal was to come in and clear this quad area to stop the conflict between the two groups. And we've watched that methodically happen over the last hour. The last group of people we see still here are in this corner where they're still kind of in discussion. LAPD has reinforced this area, CHP has pulled back, but still a large contingency of officers from CHP, LAPD, as well as UCLA's Public Safety Department. And you see a number of people just chanting and talking still, but no arrests that we've seen yet. The officers were all here ready to go, and we have yet to see any arrests. And still a large contingency of officers off camera that we've seen preparing to come in just in case they were needed. Yeah, I think we could stay here for that. What do you think, Tyler, about 15 minutes on station? Yeah, about 15 minutes on station we could do from now. So about 4:05, we'll need to start walking out. And here you see, like mentioned in the tan, these are CHP officers. They're now reinforcing the line behind LAPD as well. And they're just keeping people out of this quad. Yeah, go ahead. We could save a little fuel. We're still the only ones here. Live continuous coverage. As we get closer to the morning, I've seen a lot more activity here in the encampment. They actually have food set up. They're heavily entrenched in there, so you see a lot more movement going on that side, and you see this area just now completely clear. And excuse us as we orbit through this little bit of fog here, a little bit of marine layer coming on here to the Westwood area. Very interesting. Now we see the main line of officers. Basically, they're now rotating. I hear them on their frequency here, where they're going to now CHP will step in, give the LAPD officers a bit of a break or a breather, and so you're going to see this rotate through with a number of these officers that are holding these skirmish lines. So you saw LAPD now walking back and taking a break while CHP moved in to support and fill those positions, just holding this whole quad area. And again, showing you here's a number of the building materials that were stripped away from that area in between where people were at earlier. And all those building materials were being grabbed and picked up and taken back to an area. So you could see initially this was highly fortified with a number of building materials. It has since been torn down in a number of areas in an attempt to break this barrier between the two groups. So majority of it still up and still in place. And there we see, again, LAPD contingency just holding all access to this quad from anybody entering. You can keep it a little bit wider, Tyler. Got it. Still streaming, and we'll be live at the top of the 4. Got it, got it. And those of you still with us here, all of our streaming platforms on ABC, we're still here with live continuous coverage over UCLA. We're getting into our 4 o'clock hour. We'll be live on ABC and abc.com. So thank you for staying with us, and we'll be with you back live on TV. Let's try to get back over there a little quicker, just because we're going to be live in a minute or so. And, Copy. Good right now. Just hold it till they come off this story, and then we'll jump. Gabe, we're going to head back to Van Nuys for fuel.
app.
There's a good deal of fine weather around today, but low cloud, mist and fog will take some time to burn back to eastern coasts. There'll be some patchy rain for Scotland and a few showers elsewhere, but there's heavy rain expected for central, southern England and Wales later in the day. That will give way to thunderstorms tonight. The oak pollen season is peaking in the south, where there will be high levels. Further north, the pollens will be birch and ash.
Sky News pollen reports brought to you by the Kleenex Your Pollen Pal app.
Traveling is not just about the destination. It's also about how you get there. Fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better.
Welcome back. Violent scenes outside the University of California in Los Angeles continue, where clashes have broken out at a pro-Palestinian demonstration. Well, these are the latest pictures that we have coming out of California. It's in the early hours of the morning there. The clashes started in the early hours, and it's outside a tent encampment. This is a place where pro-Palestinian protesters have erected barricades and plywood for protection. Counter-protesters then tried to pull this down, and this then escalated. The protesters shoved and kicked one another. Things were thrown, including chairs and sticks. The mayor of LA has described the violence that has unfolded this evening as absolutely abhorrent and inexcusable, and the police have been called in to the campus there. Well, we'll return to that story as we're able to regain connections with Martha Kellner. But meanwhile, Sky News understands that the 14-year-old victim of yesterday's sword attack in Hainault was a student at Bancroft School in Woodford Green in East London. Our correspondent Saba Chowdhury joins us now from East London. And Saba, what details are emerging about what happened there yesterday?
Good morning. Well, here in the ground, community in shock, really, reeling after the murder of a 14-year-old schoolboy yesterday morning. Now, while we don't yet know the identity of the 14-year-old child, that's not yet in the public domain, what we do know is that he attended a local private school about 3 miles away from where we are now, called Bancroft School. Now, Bancroft
Yeah, I got you. Good morning.
Saba, thanks very much. Right, let's take a look at the weather. Well, the weather continues to become warmer through the week, but southern parts of the country are likely to see some heavy rain and thunderstorms later today and early on Friday. Low cloud, mist and fog over central and eastern areas will burn back to North Sea coasts this morning. There'll be a few showers in the west early in the day, but showers will also develop through central areas over time. It'll be warm for most, with daytime highs of 18 or 19 Celsius, but parts of the east and the southeast could reach as high as 22 Celsius, which is 72 Fahrenheit. However, it will be cooler on eastern coasts. Northwest Scotland will see the best of the day's rain. Rain will spread through central southern England later. You're watching Sky News Today. Coming up, we're going to bring you all the very latest from the United States, where police and riot gear have gathered to break up protests at a university in California. Hello, you're watching Sky News Today. It's 1 o'clock. These are our headlines. Check chaos on campus. US police move in as a pro-Palestinian demonstration at LA's University of California turns violent. For hours now, students have been involved in a standoff with officers wearing riot gear and releasing pepper spray.
These are scarcely fathomable scenes on a US university campus. A young woman there praying to a line of California Highway Patrol officers with batons in their hands, wearing gas masks and helmets.
Also ahead, Sky News understands that the 14-year-old boy killed in yesterday's machete attack in East London attended the same school as the Nottingham stabbing victim, Grace O'Malley Kumar. The Home Office rounds up the first group of migrants that will be deported to Rwanda as the Prime Minister accuses Labour of having no alternative plan.
While we're getting on stopping the boats, all Labour would do is stop the planes.
And ahead of tomorrow's local elections, we test the mood and ask voters in our target town of Grimsby for their opinions on today's PMQ's performances. Hello, good afternoon. We start this lunchtime with violent scenes in America as protesters clashed and riot police were called in to calm a major incident at a university in Los Angeles. A warning, there is some flash photography coming up. But it all started when a group of protesters appeared to take down pro-Palestinian signs and placards from a camp where demonstrators had been positioned at the University of California. Other students who live on the campus then appeared to try to defend the camp's perimeter. As anger boiled over, the Los Angeles Police Department was called in to help university police and other law enforcement agencies try to restore order. During the violence, fireworks were set off into the pro-Palestinian encampment by groups of counter-protesters, which heightened the already tense situation on the ground. Well, these are the live pictures that we have from the scene. It is now the middle of the night there. Earlier, our US correspondent Martha Kellner was sprayed at the protest. This was what happened.
From within that encampment, or certainly from the perimeter of that encampment, some substance was dispensed. I don't know whether this was tear gas or there's cheers just happening as police potentially prepare to go in and break up this encampment. But yet some substance, whether it be pepper spray or tear gas, I'm not entirely sure, was dispensed from within that encampment, and it certainly was very aggravating for the lungs. I saw one man furiously trying to get it out of his eyes as well. Some anti-Semitic chanting coming from the Palestinian supporters here. I couldn't quite make it out, but it is an anti-Semitic chant. Many people have shown up in the past 3 or 4 hours since the violent skirmishes have broken out at these protests and counter-protests here at UCLA. Many of them students, but we do believe that there are a number of non-students here as well. Police just moving towards this tent perimeter. You can see here students guarding the perimeter to that tent encampment. They're refusing to leave, those students, but they're now being forcibly removed from where they were guarding the perimeter. Over the past 2 weeks as these protests have mushroomed from Columbia University in New York to campuses in the north, south and west now of this country, as they've moved, more than 1,000 arrests have been made. I'm just going to focus on this woman in front. She is a pro-Palestinian protester, and she is refusing to move for the California Highway Patrol. She is now edging backwards. She appears to be kneeling down, perhaps in prayer, at the feet of the California Highway Patrol. I'm just going to leave that image with you. is a remarkable sight to see. She appears to be making a gesture to prayer, but the California Highway Police not allowing her, they are now allowing her to do so. She's been told to stand up by those police officers. She appears to be in prayer. These are scarcely fathomable scenes on a US university campus. A young woman there praying to a line of California Highway Patrol officers with batons in their hands, wearing gas masks and helmets. It really is quite remarkable to see.
Well, Martha joins us live now from the University of California campus. And Martha, has the situation calmed any?
Yeah, it definitely has. This is still a fluid, evolving situation, but as you can see, it is much calmer here. There are a couple of groups of police officers in a gaggle together in the middle of this lawn, but otherwise the police line seems to have moved back, and the police, I think we can just show you here, they've created a barrier between the outside world, if you like, and the encampment of pro-Palestinian supporters beyond. All of the counter-protesters, or at least the vast majority of counter-protesters who are the pro-Israel supporters, they have been cleared from the vicinity. Bystanders, students who had seen what was going on their social media, who came down here to see it for themselves, they've also now been cleared. It's around 5:05 in the morning here. The question is, what now happens to this encampment of students and others who are pro-Palestine? Will they be forcibly moved on, or will the police decide that they can remain here? You can see one of them there just enjoying a morning cup of coffee after the events of this evening, which have been violent and volatile. It all began around 11 p.m. yesterday evening when the pro-Palestinian protesters say that rocks and fireworks were hurled from the outside into that camp. What I keep hearing time and again, actually from both pro-Palestine and pro-Israel protesters here, that they were surprised just how long the police took to arrive. It was 2.5 hours after these skirmishes began before police arrived on the scene. They say that they were called in by UCLA due to multiple acts of violence, say the LAPD, within this large encampment on the campus. Just to give you an idea of now how seriously this situation is being treated, the Mayor of LA, Karen Bass, she was on a trip to Washington, D.C. She has ended that trip now and is on her way back to LA. She'll arrive in the next couple of hours to try and work out how to deal with this situation, because UCLA administrators, the people in charge of this university, say that they now do deem this encampment to be illegal. So the question for authorities is just how do they deal with this now?
Martha, thanks so much for that. Sky News understands the 14-year-old
drift south just a tiny bit. They just launched, so they should be here soon. Yeah, until they have a shot. Yeah. They're up in the fog there. It's coming behind you.
Oh, there's 4 of us up there. Right in front of us? All right, copy. You have me now, Michelle? Curious to do. I got you. You have me? All right, it's a talker. Can you ask him to move out for us so we can move in a little bit since it's our picture only? So they're in our way, and that's us, so just tell them to move. Our picture's coming up. They're not even being used. All right. All right, so let's move right on a little bit to the west here. Get a little steeper. Well, it's not good. They better not let that one get out of hand. We'll be in big trouble. That's where all the fighting was, and they were tearing the wall down right there. That's the barricade they were trying to pull down. And most of the, if you open up and go left, you don't see near as many patrol cars. They were lined up on that street right there.
Not as many at all. And you can see they were all lined up here. Now they've put in barriers. This was all police along this line earlier.
The top of your screen, how are they stopping people from getting up there? They have a row of officers as well?
No, the barricade is there.
I mean, to the top, up in there.
No officers.
That's interesting, yeah. You're coming up, I think. There's still a lot of resources down there. Wow, look at that. Yeah, there's still a bunch, though. Okay. I'll probably want to talk a little bit about those barricades that they put up on the bottom of your screen and then how many officers are here. Yeah, exactly. I could barely hear you, Michelle, but I understand I'm up next. Is that what you were saying? Oh, the text? LAPD officers, CHP is on the scene, some LA County Sheriff's deputies are here. And I think what's really going to be interesting right now is if they're going to continue to put in place these types of procedures to keep the two parties apart. They have not done that in the past, and last night everything erupted, but we do see a large contingent of police officers right now. I'm certain they're in the process of talking with UCLA school administrators, trying to come up with a plan to make sure what happened last night does not happen again. But it's not that easy to do when these things start to erupt, so they'll be looking at ways to try and make sure that doesn't happen again. In the meantime, though, students have to go to school. A lot of them don't feel safe. We've got finals coming up. We're going to have to see how this all plays out, but I would expect to see some type of police presence here all day long and well into the evening. Rachel, John? Yeah. It's all right.
At UCLA, much quieter than when Martha was there earlier. The encampment seems to have been dismantled somewhat, but of course the anger on campus remains. We'll keep an eye on the situation at UCLA and in campuses across America as those pro-Palestinian protests continue. Now, Sky News understands that the 14-year-old victim of yesterday's sword attack in East London was a student at Bancroft School in Woodford Green. Today, that school's flag has been flying at half-mast in tribute to the pupil who lost his life. The school in Essex is the same one attended by Grace O'Malley Kumar, who was stabbed to death in Nottingham last year. Now, today, footage has emerged of the moment the attack began, with the van being crashed into a house in Hanolt. A pedestrian, highlighted here in red, is seen walking as the van approaches. Then they appear to be hit by the vehicle. What happened to that person is not known. The suspect is then seen walking away. Well, the Prime Minister had this to say about the attack earlier in the House of Commons.
Such violence has no place on our streets. It's absolutely heartbreaking that a teenage boy has died, and I can't imagine what his family are going through, and we send them our heartfelt condolences.
So we're thinking like starting here and then bringing you around.
I missed the call the first time, and then I called
bring you around here with the media in the background.
Or maybe for that. So if our arc is right, this way you can also talk about the lessons through there. Or do you want to work up and address it?
Yeah, it was a random focus.
Yeah. You can see what's left of the two sides here. That's a good idea. That's a really good idea. That's a good idea. He never says that to me. I don't believe that. That's twice in 2 days. Still a heavy police presence. He's very confident to speak what's wrong with the east side. Here, the campus of the university says it's illegal at this point. So
Hey, good morning, everybody. All right, so in a minute, you're going to hear from the mayor and the leadership of the NYPD, the police commissioner as well. I think last night is another example of why we call New York's finest. Just a tremendous job done by the men and women of the NYPD. Such restraint, such precision, just a totally great job by the men and women of the NYPD, especially our ESU, SRG, and CRT units. So I can, from all of us up here, we just want to commend them, and I'm sure from most of the New Yorkers we spoke to, big kudos to those units and all of the cops who helped in that operation last night. So let's get this started, and let's hear from the mayor of New York City, Eric Adams.
Thank you so much, Tariq. I want to be clear that although there was a massive operation taking place at Columbia University, we also was dealing with an operation taking place at CUNY, and we also had a city to protect. So this is not the department that will deal with one production at a time. There are a multitude of things that happens in a city of this capacity and magnitude, and you have to be a well-organized professional operation to deal with all of those encounters. And I just want to thank Commissioner Caban, the Chief of Department, Madry, Chief Shell, Commissioner Daughtry, First Deputy Commissioner Kinsella, and the entire operation. And specifically, I just really want to thank Commissioner Weiner. She was the one that was monitoring the situation when I first started seeing the protests take place in the city. It just did not fit right. I saw similar indicators from the Black Lives Matters March when it was brought to my attention that there were those who came to the city to disrupt our city, and she was able, through her team, was able to conduct an investigation, and what I feared was actually materialized and actualized by those who were on the ground. And I know that there are those who are attempting to say, well, the majority of people may have been students. You don't have to be the majority to influence and co-op an operation. That is what this is about. And so if we want to play the word police, you could do so. I want to play the New York City police, where we're going to protect our city from those who are attempting to do what is happening globally. There is a movement to radicalize young people, and I'm not going to wait until it's done and all of a sudden acknowledge the existence of it. This is a global problem that young people are being influenced by those who are professionals at radicalizing our children, and I'm not going to allow that to happen as the mayor of the city of New York. So the men and women of the New York City Police Department should be proud of yourself. At the request of Columbia University, after speaking with them throughout the week, at their request and their acknowledgement that outside agitators were on their grounds training and really co-opting this movement, at their request, we went in and conducted an operation to allow Columbia University to remove those who have turned the peaceful protest into a place where anti-Semitism and anti-Israel attitudes were pervasive. Approximately 300 people were arrested at Columbia and City College. We are processing the arrests to distinguish between who were actual students and who were not supposed to be on the ground. And we pointed out yesterday, these external actors with a history of escalating situations and trying to create chaos, not to peacefully protest, but create chaos. If you were at City College and you saw the bottles, the garbage cans, the other items that were thrown at police officers, those police officers showed a great level of discipline to not allow this to evolve to an out-of-control situation. As we pointed out yesterday, they are attempting to disrupt our city, and we are not going to permit it to happen. And we're proud to say they have been removed from the campus. The NYPD's precision policing ensure that the operation was organized, calm, and that there were no injuries or violent clashes. And to be clear, this is not our analysis of what took place last night. National independent journalists acknowledged what the police department did yesterday, and they were on the ground to see it. And I want to be clear that we will continue to use this level of professionalism. And we saw the intersectionality of all the things we have been working on. Drones allowed us to do a complete analysis of the Hamilton building and the location. We were able to know how to precisely go in and conduct the operation, making sure the encryption of our radios, because they were not able to monitor and hear our deployment tactics, it allowed us to have the element of surprise that we went on the ground, training with our CRT team, precisionally knowing how to go in and conduct a professional operation. We didn't wake up and executed a plan. This is a plan that has been put in place since January 2022, when we understood our police department had to be prepared for uncertainties like this. And so the request we received in writing could not have been clearer. While those who broke into the building did include students, it was led by individuals who are not affiliated with the university. The school needed the NYPD's assistance to clear Hamilton Hall and the encampments outside, a dual operation on the grounds that took place successfully, clearing the tents, taking back and reclaiming Hamilton Hall. And we said from the beginning that students have a right to protest, and free speech is the cornerstone of our society. But as our major concern, we knew and we saw that there were those who were never concerned about free speech. They were concerned about chaos. It was about external actors hijacking peaceful protests and influence students to escalate. There's nothing peaceful about barricading buildings, destroying property, or dismantling security cameras. We cannot allow what should be a lawful protest to turn into a violent spectacle that saves and serves no purpose, as I said. There's no place for acts of hate in our city. We made that clear. That's from anti-Semitism to Islamophobia to anti-Sikhism and other communities, as our AAPI community. We have been consistent. There's no place for hate in this city, and I want to continue to commend the professionalism of the police department and to thank Columbia University. It was a tough decision. We understood that. But with the very clear evidence of their observation and the clear evidence from our intelligence division that they understood it was time to move and the action had to end. And we brought it to a peaceful conclusion. And we're going to continue to coordinate with Columbia, as we have been from the start and all of our academic institutions, to find a peaceful middle of allowing our young people to protest without violence. We support the right of free speech and open debate. We will always protect the right to protest, but we must balance the right with keeping students, the school, and our city safe. And it is a combined effort that we're going to continue to move in the right direction to accomplish this goal. We know that this is only a comma in the full sentence of public protection in the city. This is not a celebratory moment. We should never had to get here in the first place. We can't create environments while children could be in danger, and we must push back on all attempts to radicalize our young people in the city like we're seeing across the entire globe. Commissioner, thank you for a job well done, and turn it over to you at this time.
Good morning, and thank you, Mayor Adams. So yesterday, the NYPD received written notification from both Columbia University and the City College of New York. The situation on their campuses had deteriorated to a point where the safety of their students, faculty, staff, and the public was at risk. So last night, at both schools' requests, the NYPD entered the campuses and removed protesters who refused to leave the area. Approximately 300 arrests were made, with preliminary charges ranging from trespass to criminal mischief to burglary. At this point, we're going to let the criminal justice system play out. But as we said last night, the universities worked for weeks to negotiate with the protesters, to resolve the situation, and to restore order on their campuses. But once it became clear that public safety was a real concern, especially after the protesters escalated the situation by breaking and entering into a university building, the NYPD was called in to do their job. And I just want to say to the men and women of this department, thank you. Since the terrorist attack of October 7th, the NYPD has responded to more than 2,400 protests and demonstrations across this city. About 1,100 of those were related to the situation in Israel and Palestine. And at every one, we've worked to keep protesters safe and protect their First Amendment rights. At the same time, we've worked to keep our residents and workforce safe, to make sure our neighborhoods have full access to emergency services, and to keep life moving in the largest city in the nation. This isn't easy work, but no one does it better than the men and women of the NYPD. Lastly, I want to thank the officials at both Columbia University and City College for their efforts in the developing situation, their continuous and open communication with everyone involved, from the protesters to their students and staff, to city officials, including the police department, was all about public safety. And at the end of the day, that's what we're focused on. Our job is to keep people in our city safe, and the NYPD is ready to do their job anywhere and anytime we're called upon. They tried to lock us out, but the NYPD and the people of the city of New York will never be locked out, and we will always work together to keep our city safe.
With that, we'll take questions. Marshall Kramer?
Commissioner and Mr. Mayor, I wonder if you could tell us how many of the people who were arrested both inside Hamilton Hall and outside were not affiliated with the school, were not students, were outside agitators, both inside and outside. And I have a second question.
Thank you. I'll pass that question over to our Chief Patrol, John Shaw.
So right now, as it breaks down, we have 282 arrests. As of right now, we have 282 arrests. 173 of those came from City College, 109 came from Columbia. How it breaks down to your question, we'll have that answer sometime today. We haven't broken it down yet, but we will have that answer.
Can you give us any more details about the people who were not affiliated with them, or were they what groups they were associated with?
Good morning. So there are a number of different individuals who we know from over the years associated with protests, not just in our city, but in other cities as well, who are linked to and who we see doing training around the change in tactics that we described yesterday and that we all witnessed. The black bloc attire, the breaking windows, breaking doors, the vandalism, property destruction, the barricading, makeshift weapons that we recovered in the encampment. And so that change in tactics, combined with the presence of known individuals on campus in the lead up to what happened in Hamilton Hall, is why we had a real elevated concern around public safety.
Katie Honey?
Just one moment. And, Marsha, we know that the terminology of outside agitators was used during the civil rights movement, and people attempted to show that the movement was not legitimate. So we understand that. But this police department cannot get caught up on what's the political correct terminology. We have to be caught up on public safety. There were individuals on the campus, should not have been there. There were people who are professionals, and we saw evidence of training. We saw a shift in tactics that were being used. And when you start using the intelligence that Intel was able to supply, we knew it was time to communicate directly with the school and say, you have more than a peaceful protest on your hand.
Yeah, and Mr. Mayor, if I could just add to that, just as the letter said that we received from Columbia,
this was led by outside agitators. And this was also stated in the letter that we received when Columbia asked us to move in.
All right, I think we have a video that we want to show you before we take some more questions. So, if you can play the video. Before we continue with questions, Commissioner Shepard will just give a quick overview of what we just saw, and then we'll continue with the questions.
Yeah, the reason why we just showed that video is that a lot of arrests made, almost 300 arrests made last night, and what you see is the overwhelming majority of those arrests that were made without incident. No injuries, no real scuffles with police. It was just an amazing job again, and kudos to Chief Arambulis and his team, SRG, and ESU, and obviously Commissioner Daughtry leading, and Chief Shell leading the CRT last night. So make no mistake about it, this is a very difficult operation, but we made it look like that it wasn't problematic. And the reason was the skill of the cops that were out there last night. A lot of these people would have resisted, but the way that these officers talked to them, handled them, and took them into custody, it was very professional, and the overwhelming majority of arrests just led to a quick arrest with no incident, and then right down to MAPC where they were processed.
And another significant part of the video was at the end. That's our flag, folks. Don't take over our buildings and put another flag up. That may be fine to other people, but it's not to me. My uncle died defending this country. And these men and women put their lives on the line. And it's despicable that schools will allow another country flag to fly in our country. So blame me for being proud to be an American. And I thank Commissioner Daughtry for putting that flag back up. We're not surrendering our way of life to anyone.
Katie Honan.
Could you just, I wanted to just double back on the outside agitators. I know you said you'd identified some people. Why is it so difficult for the NYPD to say X amount of people were outside agitators, especially since you've identified them. The mayor's been talking about them for more than a week. And secondly, blocking reporters from covering the events, then tweeting out your own videos, showing us this video. It's different than what we were seeing outside, especially the use of what seemed to be use of force from the police. Is that part of the NYPD's attempt to control the narrative, which I know some of the people in the dais have talked about before? But I guess first with the outside agitators, why is it so difficult to just say 10 people, 20 people, especially if, as you say, they were leading the occupation of the building?
Yeah, so, I think it's not difficult to say that we know certain individuals that are well known to us who have been involved in what we assess to be training, especially around a change in tactics. We're in the process of sorting through all of the data that we recovered last night. So sifting through the names of everybody and were they affiliated with a school or not, that takes time, and we want to make sure that we're giving you accurate information. But I think the larger point is really important, which is this is not about students expressing ideas. It is about a change in tactics that presents a concern and a normalization and mainstreaming of rhetoric. And I'm not just talking about language, I'm now talking about tactics, and that's what shifted our response yesterday. But a normalization and mainstreaming of rhetoric associated with terrorism that has now become pretty common on college campuses, right? You see people wearing headbands associated with foreign terrorist organizations. This happened in October when you had a viral TikTok reissuing of Osama bin Laden's 2002 letter to America. So that's a larger concern. It's separate from what happened yesterday, but they're related. We do not want ideas, we do not want campuses, which are where people are supposed to be learning and being in a conducive environment for all of the things that we do in schools, being turned into places where people are committing vandalism, property damage, and committing crimes.
But if you know who the leaders are, you said yesterday at a press conference, it would be repeated on national television. Why not say 3, 4, 5 people? The mayor said last week that he questioned why all the tents were the same when they aren't. It's this question of outside agitators. It's been a prevalent message being shared by the NYPD and City Hall. So can you offer us any more insight into it beyond just a lock that they sold to Columbia students?
Let me be very clear. This is an ongoing, evolving investigation. The intelligence division must be extremely sensitive about information they release. Our goal is not to ensure you get a good story. Our goal is to make sure that we tell the right story. There are people that we have been watching in organizations that are not part of the campus. We've been very clear. There are individuals and organizations that are not students. We're seeing a shift in tactics that are being used, destruction of property, destructions of cameras, and so many other things. We saw paraphernalia and pamphlets about disruptions. There's a series of things that the intelligence division has brought to make a determination that there's an influence going on right now. Now, we know that people would rather us put in a neat little bow, but that is not the way law enforcement operate, and we're not going to release any information that is too sensitive to release at this time. We know there are outside individuals that have been influencing this issue.
And Katie, the second part of your question when it comes to the press. So just take you back through yesterday. We released 2 messages to the press right before this operation was taking place, that if you're a member of the press and you wanted to get some access and get some shots, to come and meet a DCPI representative on 114th Street, and then we'll work it out with you from there. The reason why we have our own cameras inside of there is because we have police officers. They have tactical gear, they have helmets, they have vests, and we don't know what to expect when we go through these doors. So we cannot just take the press and go hitting doors with ESU. It doesn't work like that. When we were very transparent, and we also shared our video with members of the media this morning. It's available from DCPI now to continue sharing. All right?
And Commissioner, let me just add on to that. When we, and Carlos, you can chime in if you want, but when we took action on NYU, when we received NYU's letter that they wanted to declare their encampment, when I tell you my own personal opinion is that the press kind of got in the way of our operation. There was hundreds of views getting in the way of officers as they were trying to make arrests. Okay, well, I'm saying it was more than 50, and we got video to prove that. So thank you, Commissioner Shepard, for getting the press together so we can know where the press is at, and that we don't confuse them with the students or protesters. Thank you.
Oh, thanks. So my question is twofold. I want to know about the individuals who are in training who made these makeshift weapons, who have the pamphlets and all of that. Is that one certain group? Would you call this a new breed of homegrown terrorists that we should be worried about here in New York City if you're tracking them across America? And then my second question is about that impressive tactic of going into the building on that Bearcat that was dramatic and impressive to see. Was there something about the timing of when you did that? Can you paint a picture of what was going inside, what you could see on the drones? With those makeshift weapons, was violence imminent, and did you think at that point you have to go in?
So Commissioner wanted to take the first and
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's really important to very, in a nuanced way, describe what we're seeing, and I wouldn't describe it as a new breed of homegrown terrorism. There is, though, a concern around radicalization, as the mayor and the police commissioner have conveyed, I think, very effectively. This is a time when, if you have, and to your point about being more specific, last week there was the wife of somebody who had been convicted for material support to terrorism on campus, and we have no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing on her part, but that's not somebody who I would want necessarily influencing my child if I were a parent of somebody at Columbia, or the individuals who are involved in doing some of this training and tactical awareness activity. These students don't come in the doors knowing how to barricade themselves behind barriers that they've created, right? These are all skills that are taught and learned, and that presents a problem. And so, this is not about policing ideas in any way, shape, or form. It is about recognizing when there is an actual public safety concern. And we mentioned this yesterday, but it's worth reiterating to the protesters themselves. If you're barricaded in a building and an emergency happens, there's a risk to you. So it's specific, and we have to be calibrated, but we also have to be open and honest about what we're seeing, and we're seeing a trajectory that concerns us. Oh, yeah, so some images of stuff that was recovered, and, there was the image on the bottom left was pretty widespread distribution in the initial weeks after October 7th, and when we saw a lot of big numbers of individuals in protests, which is just a map of locations that were focused on for protest activity. Imagery on the top right suggesting fomenting chaos and squatting as a tactic, which we've seen in protests previously, some zip ties and some what we would call a very rudimentary makeshift weapon. And I think the reason for all of the protective gear that you saw last night, and I don't want to speak for my colleagues who specialize in this, is to protect officers when you're going into a situation that you don't fully understand what might greet you on the other side of the door. So this is important, and it is not just a New York City issue. It's obviously not just a Columbia issue. We saw it spread to CCNY last night, but this is unfolding across the country and in Europe as well. So this is a challenge we're all going to be dealing with for some time.
So good morning, everyone. So it took carefully planning, especially with the chief of department, Chief Madry, and also all the executive boards, chief members that in our department, to plan this tactics to enter this building. So as we saw, there was several areas where it was barricaded by several items, such as vending machines, chairs, tables, and so on. And as we entered, it was very difficult for us to get in and push our way through because they were throwing objects at us. So it was very difficult. So the amount that it took, but it was, we tactically had every team around the building to enter that building. So there was carefully planning.
Since we're on this topic, can we just go look at TikTok and some of the planning? The response was enormous. And we could just maybe sort of how that played out, at what point did you decide to plan for this, and how well that came together?
And I'll speak to that. Thank you for just bringing that question to light. We really didn't plan for this. Remember, Hamilton Hall was just taken over recently, fairly recently, and we didn't get any requests from Columbia. As a matter of fact, I did a press conference around 11 o'clock yesterday. We did not have a request. So when I finally got to the office yesterday and we realized we had a request, we had to put a plan together fast, all right? But this is what we do. We're the best police department in the world for a reason, because we do have the ability to adapt, sit down. You know, we brought all the thought leaders in the room, Chief of Special Operations Division, Chief of Emergency Service Unit, the Chief of Patrol, Chief of Transit, Chief of Housing. I had them all in the room because they have years and years, hundreds of years of experience in the room. And we had to figure out how we were going to deal with what was going on in the street, which was the first part of the plan, because we had to be able to move. We had to be able to bring the Bearcat in. All right, we had to make sure we had a clear passage for the buses once we had arrested individuals on the buses. There was a lot that went into it. Then we had to deal with the encampment, and then we had to deal with the building. We had to make sure we kept them separate. So the decision was made that Chief of Patrol would lead the strategy on the ground to deal with the encampment, while the Chief of Special Operations Division and the Chief of ESU would deal with the building. All that equipment you see is life-saving equipment, all right? It's not equipment to go out and hurt and attack people. That is life-saving equipment. When we have to save someone, that's the equipment that we use. In this case, we had to breach a building, a very difficult building, a building that we knew doors were fortified with vending machines, couches, metal chairs, and the students and the people who were in the building were also pushing against the building and throwing objects at ESU as they made entry, all right? For the first time in many years, we use distraction devices, something we haven't used in years. The only person in the department who's authorized to allow that is me. And before we sat down, I told the members of the ESU, try not to use them, but if we're under attack, and we have to do this not only to keep them safe, but to keep the students safe, we made a decision to use them, and that's what we did. And even prior to going to Columbia, we had to pivot because City College got violent, and we had to send some of the resources from Columbia to help deal with City College, come back down to Columbia, and then go back to City College. That we didn't plan for that, all right? But this is this department's ability to move and pivot as needed to keep people safe, and that's what we did yesterday.
Yeah, I just want to add one more thing to that. We also had to secure 5 dorms of over 2,000 students to make sure they were safe, and we didn't give them the option to come out of the dorm for just that reason. So there was 2,000 additional kids on that campus that we secured. They didn't come out, and that's what added to the level of safety and success we had in this plan.
Okay, we're going to take 2 more questions. Tina Moore, New York Post.
Hi, Commissioner Weiner. To go back to the wife of the man convicted on terror charges, was she advising them, training them? Can you give us a little bit more on what she was doing there?
So her presence was last week. It was, before what we saw over the last couple of days. And, we haven't been in the encampment, so we don't have a lot of fidelity on exactly. And it isn't just her. There was a ton of people coming onto the campus, and Columbia University described in their letter that the college had become a magnet for people from the outside. And again, this isn't just something we're hearing from Columbia, it's something that other universities have told us as well. And they know their student population better than anybody. We know the people we know, they know their community. And so this is something we are all seeing independently, is external folks. And does this inherently mean that you're going to see the kind of escalatory tactics that we saw yesterday? It may or may not. But when we do see them, we understand that there's a risk.
All right, this will be our final question. Aaron Katersky.
Thanks, Carlos. Thanks, guys, for doing this. I wondered, maybe for the Commissioner or the Mayor, if you could just say a little bit about, prior to the authorization letter arriving, what your conversations with Columbia were like that led up to it, and then what information you were sharing and what they were telling you, and then also just your expectations on presence going forward. How many officers remain on campus? It seems like you're authorized to be there through commencement. What's your expectation about what you're going to have to do in the next couple of weeks?
The Commissioner could talk about his conversations, but we have been having ongoing conversations with all of our universities. Once we picked up from our intelligence that there was a real desire to start taking over buildings and a desire to escalate what was happening already. And we spoke with the institutions and told them we're here. When you need us, we're going to pivot quickly. And I think it was clear from the combination of what Intel was able to share and the observations that the schools were making that the decision was made. As Chief Madry stated, this was a last-minute call. When we did our press conference, we did not receive a letter at that time. But I think the escalation of taking over the Hamilton building, people saw the information that the Intel was supplying. But we have been in regular contact with the school leadership, not only the president, but part of their operation management, and we communicated with them, shared information with them. As we got it, we shared it with them. So we knew the balance of not going in without being invited unless there was imminent threat. We knew that balance, and I know the commissioner could share his conversations also with the leadership.
Yeah, pretty much the same conversations about students' right to protest peacefully, and obviously keeping every student, faculty, and staff safe at the schools. And I'll turn it over to Chief Department, who will talk about what we're going to do going forward as far as presence there at the schools.
Yep. Right after this, we're going to go out. We're going to do a assessment of the campus. We're going to make sure we speak with the campus officials, and then we're going to make a determination what kind of resources that we're going to put there. Our resources are there to support the university staff, the public safety on campus, the teachers, the faculty members on campus, just to make sure that the environment is safe. So that's what our goal is going forward. We're going to see how we can assist them, make a determination how many officers that will be needed to do that, so that the campus, the faculty, public safety, the teachers, the leadership, they can function and get through commencement.
So there'll be an NYPD.
The campus is secure as we speak, and we'll do a reassessment like Chief Madry just mentioned.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for your time and attention. Thank you.
Raise your hands.
Follow up. Katie, Katie, come grab us. It's not a fight club.
Yeah, Leslie, as Mark mentioned, it is very quiet compared to what we saw late last night and into the morning when things just erupted. You see the encampment there, the pro-Palestinian encampment. And the bottom of your screen, to that area right there, is really where the melee took place, where they had all that violence. We'll show you some video. There were pro-Israeli protesters went up to that line, started to pull down some of the offensive signs that they felt. The two parties came into contact with one another, and then it was chaos. There were people throwing rocks and bottles, using sticks to hit each other. Fireworks were going off. And there were injuries. We don't have an extent of how many people were injured. What's somewhat interesting, though, is they had hundreds of police here during that whole time, watch that unfold, and they did not move in. Compared to what we saw at USC, a private university not far from here, as soon as there was violence, they moved in, dispersed the crowd. We don't have an update on injuries. We know right now that they did not make any arrests. There's still a pretty large police presence, nothing like what we saw last night or earlier this morning, but it looks like they've set up barriers, and what they're trying to do is make sure the two parties do not come into contact with one another once again, so we just don't have another day or night like we saw last night with all that violence. Leslie? Let me go, Drac. Just pull up with a pad.